Well, it's always a pleasure to speak after David, because I always start my speeches saying we accept science, and it's even great to be here tonight after David because you've all heard about the science, and David is a world-renowned expert on climate science, and BZE, Beyond Zero Emissions, we absolutely accept the science, and our job is to say we have solutions and to identify those solutions that can be implemented right now, because as David says, we actually don't have time to wait. We should have been taking very strong action some time ago, if not a decade, 2 decades ago. And there's always this excuse that we don't have the technology, we need to wait for some breakthrough in some technology that will save humanity. Our argument is that we actually have the technologies right now, and we can't wait any longer. So our vision is a zero emissions Australia, a zero emissions planet actually, in 10 years. And we've shown how this can be done across all sectors of the economy, including agriculture, energy, buildings, transport, etc. And you might be aware that there's now an international push for a limit of 2 degrees warming by the end of this century. We believe that 2 degrees is too high. We're already seeing the impacts of almost 1 degree increase, and that those impacts include bushfires, droughts, floods, and all the extreme weather events that we've been experiencing for some time. So you can imagine a world which David has outlined, which could be 4 to 6 degrees, if not higher, warmer to that kind of level, and that's a pretty scary place. The World Bank has said that a world that is 4 degrees warmer by the end of the century will not support our current institutions, societies, and way of civilised society. So you can imagine what will happen. It's kind of Game of Thrones space. It's pretty uncivilised, in fact. So we need to be getting on with it, and we need to be going. 2 degrees is too high. Our work is showing how we can actually go beyond zero emissions. Even many of the world's leaders are now saying we need to go to net zero emissions in the second half of this century in order just to get to 2 degrees warming. So this is going to be a huge challenge for humanity, but it's also something that can be done. We have renewable energy now in Australia, which has rooftop solar has the highest penetration rate in Australia than anywhere else in the world, thanks to our colleagues mostly in South Australia, where that's just going gangbusters. We've shown that we can actually transition to 100% renewable energy in Australia in a 10-year period. I was in Canberra last night where I saw Mark Butler speak, the opposition spokesman for environment and climate change. As you know, Labor has announced a 50% renewable energy target by 2030. I said to Mark, I asked him a question, I was in the audience, I said, Mark, that's great, what about 100%? Because in fact, we were heading for 28% renewable energy in this country by 2020 until Tony Abbott interfered with the target. I actually had the fortune of designing that target back in government in the late 1990s. And the aim of that target was to set long-term investment signals so the renewable energy could make long-term 15, 20-year investments, which are required to bank a project. You need that kind of long-term signal. So when you play with the market, like the current government's done, you send all sorts of disinvestment and uncertainty in the market and send very negative signals to renewable energy companies who are aiming for a 20% target, if not a 28% target. So we were easily going to get 28%, which means 50% is a no-brainer by 2030. In fact, if you just keep the current growth of renewables at its current state, you will get 50% by 2030. So 100% is certainly ambitious, but we've shown it is achievable. We've also shown that we've busted a lot of myths about renewable energy. So there's this myth that the Prime Minister says, and Tony and Joe Hockey, that renewables don't work when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. So there's technologies such as concentrated solar power, which stores energy in molten salt technology overnight, which can generate 24-hour power. There's technology such as pumped storage hydro, where you can pump seawater using wind technology during the day, pump it up to a turkey nest dam, release the water from that dam overnight when the wind isn't blowing, and thereby get 24-hour power, baseload generation. So this is technology that can meet all of our needs. In fact, with rooftop solar and the penetration rates in Australia, we're seeing wholesale prices actually fall. We're also seeing during peak periods, prices drop because solar is running in the day when everyone's turning their air conditioners on. So in fact, renewables offer an enormous opportunity in this country, and as you know, we're endowed with such vast resources here. That's energy. We've also looked at things like electric vehicles, high-speed rail, which provide real alternatives to transport. These technologies can be powered by a grid, which is based on 100% renewable energy. If you get a grid that's based on 100% renewable energy, then you can have cars, you can get trams, you can get buses, you can get high-speed rail, transporting ourselves between Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Canberra on zero emissions electricity. The hard one's agriculture, and one of the hardest things is talking about what decisions we make as individuals about what we eat. Red meat and beef, the beef industry is probably the second, if not the highest emissions intensive activity in our country. So I don't want to make you feel guilty or anything, but I no longer eat red meat. Neither does my butler, I found that last night, mainly because of climate change. We've shown that we can actually go to zero emissions agriculture by stopping land clearing, which by the way, the Howard government tried to do and was quite successful prior to the Kyoto conference, which is why we got such an easy target actually in the Kyoto conference of 108% an increase in emissions. And we got that, Australia got that because John Howard argued that we'd stop land clearing. And by the way, that was happening in Queensland until Campbell Newman came in and reversed the land clearing laws. So stopping land clearing will actually reduce our emissions by 100 million tonnes a year, huge amount. Reducing livestock numbers by about 20%, improving the times in which we burn savanna landscapes in the north of Australia, and also more effective manure management, soil management, and then reforesting only 13% of Australia's landmass, which is steep or degraded or suffering from solidity. We can actually move to zero emissions agriculture. We've also looked at zero emissions buildings. We've got an initiative called Energy Freedom, how every home can be energy free, how every home can be a net energy producer, not a consumer of energy. And I'll just make a small plug. We're launching a book, The Energy Freedom Home, on Sustainable House Day on the 13th of September. So if you're interested in that, please go to our website. We'll be launching that book. And it's quite an exciting book. It shows how in 9 easy steps, only 9, every home can be retrofitted to be zero emissions. And 8 of those steps are energy efficiency. And the last step, the 9th step, is putting rooftop solar, just an average 4.5 kilowatt system on your roof. So this can all be done. I asked Mark Butler last night about electric vehicles because he comes from Port Adelaide, and as you know, the current government said that we won't have car manufacturing in this country anymore. So I said to Mark, well, what about electric vehicles? Isn't this a great opportunity to retrofit those factories which have been making Holdens and Fords and Toyotas and other things into making electric vehicles? You'd create jobs, you'd retain the 25,000 jobs that we have in this country currently in the automotive industry, and you'd be building an industry of the future, not of the present. This is what Elon Musk has done in the USA. Tesla has bought mothballed factories in the USA, in Detroit, and refitted them to be making the Tesla Model S's and other vehicles. These vehicles actually are as high performing as the traditional internal combustion engine vehicles. They have ranges now of 500 kilometres, so there's no excuse about them not being able to meet our travel needs. And by the way, our individual travel needs on average are only about 38 kilometres when we do our average car trip. So a vehicle, even with a range of 100 kilometres or 130 kilometres, like the Nissan Leaf or the Mitsubishi Mai, will actually meet more than enough of our daily travel needs by car. So we're very much about solutions. I don't know what the time is. Trying to wrap up. We can do it. We have to do it because, as I mentioned, the world, which is even 2 degrees warmer by the end of this century, if not 4 to 6 to 8 degrees, which is where we're heading in a business as usual scenario, we need to be doing it. And so please, we'll probably hear from other speakers, but I'm going to say please keep applying political pressure, keep doing what you can in your homes and how you transport yourselves and maybe what you eat. Because together we can actually do this. We're working with Byron Shire Council, one last thing, and showing how a community can actually move to zero emissions as well. Because individuals, communities, in the absence of national government action, can actually do a hell of a lot. Thank you.